Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Breakfast Club. This late edition of the Breakfast Club, and I apologize for that. This is supposed to be the Saturday episode, and while I am recording this on a Saturday, I'm not too sure if it's going up then, but this is supposed to be the Saturday one. As usual, I am your host, Sword Sage, for this particular installment, and this is the conclusion to the first batch of round robin episodes for the Breakfast Club, where one of us basically picks a topic and the rest of us basically comments on it, and then the original presenter of the topic will give their rebuttals or their comments on the past videos. The past ones were really good. I found them to be very interesting, bringing up a wide variety of interesting points, and I'm going to do my best to try to address them in as concise a manner as I possibly can. This is actually my fourth attempt at trying to do this, and the past couple were pretty long, and I'm trying to keep this as condensed as possible. The topic in question, by the way, is on mainstream media. Basically, I brought up the fact that even though mainstream media is being attacked for its integrity right now, basically its integrity is in question, and the attack being led by President Trump, who basically stating that they're giving nothing but fake news and that they can't be trusted if they're saying anything negative about him. While this definitely is a problem and it undermines basically the job that these companies have to do, these media corporations, the mainstream news media, it undermines their job to try to give us proper information. The fact of the matter is they sort of, at least I happen to believe that they kind of put themselves in this situation. It wouldn't be so easy to state that their integrity is questionable if they weren't doing questionable things in the first place. They have a history of putting up sensationalism and propaganda as real news, and this has come back to kind of bite them. The other hosts have presented their own particular views and opinions on the topic, as I stated before, and I invite you all to check them out if you haven't seen them yet. As I said, they are really interesting, and I'll have links to each one of them below. I wanted to try to address each video in turn, like just go in order to when they came out, but if I do that, the video will go on too long. So what I'm going to try to do is just try to mash up as many of the points as possible and try to comment to them as concisely as I possibly can, as to not make this drag on for the viewer. I will start by saying that I really liked how Kazumi brought up the fact that one of the main problems is that the 24-hour news cycle itself has been corrupted and is pretty much what's led to the problems that we see now with mainstream media. He did a really good job of, coming up with a very, concise timeline of how things developed. How you start out with CNN or the Central News Network, basically, coming up with the idea of a cable news network which gives news 24 hours. In the beginning, it was just kind of repeating the same, packaged news throughout the day. Like, depending what time of the day, you'd see the same thing. It wasn't exactly a 24 hours, of continuous news. But then by the 90s, it got that way. And they were more or less, keeping true to their job until cable news stations and, competing news networks started trying to find ways to hook viewers for ratings. MSNBC, Fox News, they, jumped on the bandwagon and they started pandering to their audience, and that proved effective as far as ratings went. CNN saw this and started sliding more towards sensationalism, and that just helped bring down the quality of mainstream news to the point where people don't take it seriously anymore. That's one of the main things that he pointed out. I agree with that to an extent, especially with his complaints that the whole, bait and switch tactics are like, the carrot on the stick leading that they tend to do. Like, we got this really important information and we will give it to you right after this commercial break. Like, that sort of stupid, type of, sensationalistic entertainment style of presenting news that people, want to see has really undermined their credibility. And yes, they're doing it for money, they're doing it for ratings. We can say that, well, they need to eat, they need to put food on the table, but that's just it. When you start putting money into something that's supposed to be done for an ethical reason, i.e., in a democratic republic, if you're trying to present information that the citizens need to make proper informed voting decisions that would help to guide the country, money cannot be the sole reason for doing it. In other words, you're presenting the news because it's something that needs to be done for the sake of the country, not because you're trying to fill your pockets. Unfortunately, it's the latter that these tactics are being used for, and that's helped to bring the system down. I agree that we do need better legislation for news. This happens to be a bit of a bugbear of mine, where I personally think that if you're going to be putting up propaganda and sensationalism or slant pieces and then try to present that as factual, especially when it later on could be proven to be false, but you're trying to put that out as factual information that could actually influence votes. This is going to sound extreme, and I'll admit it, but I'm one of those people who thinks that I'm probably one of the 2 people on the planet that thinks that should be like a federal crime. But that's just me. I do think, though, that there has to be some level of regulation in place for that. Several of the viewers have pointed out that news has pretty much become entertainment, and Sister Danger in particular pointed out how it's sort of kind of led to a weird sort of complacency in American society. Basically, they're not going to report on anything that's going to rock the boat too much. As long as you're presenting things in a manner that allows people to stay in that kind of safety bubble where, things are fine, I'm comfortable, don't rock the boat. Like, basically, if it's like that, they're going to present it. It sort of reminds me of that scene from The Dark Knight when the Joker is basically saying to Harvey Dent, if I happen to, say tomorrow that a gangbanger gets shot or like an army vehicle, something blows up, no one panics because it's all part of the plan. And I kind of see that with the news. When they present, certain, like, okay, yeah, there was another shooting in Chicago, or, yet another politician was caught with a certain type of scam, but nothing major that really grips you. People are like, yeah, what did you expect? Like they just go right along with it. But things that could really affect us, things that would make us stop and go, wait, what? Rarely gets reported on until it becomes a really big deal. Like, for instance, how the pipeline's being pushed through. That was a hot button issue for a lot of people, but that was not really reported on mainstream media until alternative news and social media was pushing it out there. Then you start seeing it in the mainstream news. And then people are like, well, it was in the mainstream news all the time. Not until you were seeing it more on Twitter and Facebook posts. And it's kind of a shame when those are the things that are bringing up hot topic issues like this. So I agree that it's helped to lead to that sort of complacency. And I think it's obvious, as many people have pointed out, Kazoom, Sister Danger, JJ Talks, even Go That Funk, just about everyone's pointed out that news has become entertainment or infotainment. And once you start trying to pander and entertain your audience, that means your goal is no longer to inform them. Your goal is to enthrall them. Your goal is to, manipulate them emotionally. Do whatever you can to keep them watching your stuff so that, your ratings can go up. That doesn't help for journalistic integrity. That doesn't really help for, your factual, integrity. People are going to, even if they like being pandered to, the back of their mind, they're going to kind of realize that, yeah, I'm not, unless they're thoroughly, hooked. I mean, let's face it, you got some diehard fans of these slanted news programs, especially the pundit shows, where, yeah, everything here is right, this person 100% right, and we know they're fools. There's always different sides to things, not just 2 sides, but many different sides. There are different facets to an issue. And I think this leads to the point that Sister Danger stated that you kind of have to, if you're trying to get to the truth of the matter, you have to kind of get all these different sources, get to the bones of whatever they're trying to talk about, whatever news issue that they're bringing up. You have to get to, like, she equated it to getting the bones of these things and boiling them down in a pot until you get the essence of what it is and hopefully get the truth of that. I see it more as trying to ask the average citizen to act as if they're still in college. You basically these days, if you want to get, especially the more important the topic, politically, environmentally, whatever, the more important the topic, the more you're finding that you're going to have to go to multiple sources, multiple news sources, alternative sources, mainstream sources, whatever. Get all of them, cross-check them, reference them, fact-check, all this type of stuff as if you're doing a research paper. And then you can hopefully get to the gist of what it is. And while I will say that, well, as a citizen of a democratic republic, it's sort of a responsibility of yours to be well informed. The fact of the matter that the weight being put on the shoulders of the citizens to have to do all of this just to get to the truth so that they can actually have factual information to base their voting decisions on, to base their choice of representative on, that's a little too much, especially with these days we got very busy and hectic lives. People are working more than 8 hours a day these days just to make ends meet. And even if you are working an 8-hour job, it's still out there busting your butt doing that job. Then you got to get home, and if you have a family, you got to tend to their needs, and then you're trying to relax or escape from the day. Some people are jumping on their Xbox, or some people are watching movies. You don't really have much time to then have to sit in front of a computer or be on your phone doing the type of research that some person trying to get their master's degree would have to do. It's ridiculous, and it shouldn't be like that, but that's how it is. Nathan had brought up an interesting point about how the supposed downfall of mainstream media, and not just news media, but also entertainment, movies, TV shows, what have you, how basically the beginning of the downfall of people not really trusting or going to them as much anymore has weakened the powers of the gatekeepers of the mainstream, the gatekeepers of those who are trying to get access to mainstream media. I'm repeating that too much. He gives his own particular experience with the movie he tried to put out several years ago, and how basically his vision was stymied constantly by them stating, "Oh, we don't like this bit; it's offensive. Take that out. Take this out." And then it even got to the point where they weren't even telling him what it was that they had a problem with. They were just like, "Okay, we can't accept this right now." Basically, it was almost a way to just kind of like, got to be careful with the word censorship, but it was more like they were trying to censor whatever there was, his particular message. Like, we don't like this, take this out. We don't like this, take this out, and so on and so forth. But now with alternative ways of promoting yourself, alternative ways of producing and publishing, media, whether it, basically anybody with a webcam these days and a bit of effort can put something out on the internet. And YouTube has become the main way to disseminate this information or, this entertainment, what have you. And this has pretty much weakened the powers of the gatekeepers, as he put it. The problem is now YouTube, as he stated, is, playing ball with traditional media, and that seems to be closing the door for easy access. I agree with that, and it's something that I've been noticing for years now. How as more and more corporate influence has been getting into YouTube, the rougher things have started to become for the average person who just wants to put something out for somebody to either enjoy or get something out of. And people who put up alternative sources or punditry to news and, whether it be political or environmental or social or what have you, these people's voices are slowly, being silenced in a sense, like they're being, scurried away in the restricted type videos on YouTube, while mainstream stuff has no restrictions whatsoever. And we're seeing it more and more pushed to the forefront, despite the fact that this is supposed to be a platform for independent sources. It should be noted that some independent news sources and news media got their start on YouTube. That was how they were able to push the stuff in the beginning. Like the Real News Network, for instance, started out on YouTube before they were able to get enough public funding to kind of become more their own independent thing. So that's a concern. That maybe the powers of the traditional gatekeepers are weakening, but they're still trying to, put their fingers into the pie, so to speak. Honestly, I don't really see any way around that other than having some type of competition besides YouTube. And we've been stating that needed to be done for quite some time now. When you only have one service basically being the main way for people to, have access to being able to produce things, like having a platform where anybody can put something up. YouTube being the only real viable way to do that, That's not good. We all know that monopolies rarely lead to anything good, and this is pretty much a monopoly, whether we like YouTube or not. Finally, I'm just going to end this off with my opinion on the very thing that started this. Trump basically stating that media is, the media is lying. They're all fake news, especially if they say anything negative about him. If they say anything negative about him or on conservative issues, it's fake news. If it happens to be something that champions it or doesn't put it in a negative light, then it's fine. JJ Talks basically stated that she saw it as something of a genius move. I I don't know if I'd call it a genius move. It was a good move, but I wouldn't necessarily call it a genius move. The reason why I wouldn't call it a genius one is because it's a classic one. It's been done several times before. It's a classic move of the con artist who basically is trying to make sure that you believe them and no one else in order for you to fall for their con. It's not just con men. Anybody who basically does not want you to know what their scam is will try to find some way to undermine someone else who's pointing out that you can't trust this person. So, for instance, let's say somebody who's, I don't know, trying to sell you a bad car, a used car salesman, like, don't listen to what those guys are saying. I got the best deals over here. Like, those other guys selling those other cars are jealous. Don't listen to them. Or, somebody cheating on their spouse. Like, don't listen to those people. They're lying to you. Come on. I got your back. I've always been around. Like, they're always trying to find some way to, undermine or disparage someone who's coming up with a view that's not going to put them in a favorable light. And as somebody who his best skill, if you ask me, is self-promotion and making himself look a certain way, yeah, he would have that trick in his pocket of like, yeah, I'm great, I'm awesome. And don't listen to them. I mean, look how great I am. Aren't I great? Those guys are naysayers. It was a good move to use on his, his support base because let's face it, and I know people are going to get offended by this, but I'm sorry, it's the truth. Rabid fans of a particular ideology are not going to listen to reason, and by giving them an excuse to not listen to a difference in viewpoint or a dissenting opinion or something that completely contradicts what they want to believe, giving them an excuse to throw that away, yeah, it's a good freaking move. It's like a Machiavellian type move. I just wouldn't call it genius because, well, it's well known. It's something that people have done. So this has gone a little bit longer than I wanted, but it's not as long as the other takes, so I think this is the one I'm going to put up. I will end off, and I should have pointed this out, I will end off that I also agree with Good At Funk when he states that this stuff is influential. Media basically, whether it's alternative or mainstream, when you're putting stuff out, you have a responsibility to the public to make sure that you are clear in what you are putting out. If what you're putting out is entertainment, make sure you're portraying it as entertainment. Like, that's what this is. This is here to entertain you, or this is here to thrill you, titillate you, whatever. If it's supposed to be news, then it's supposed to be news. You're influencing people when you put this stuff out. And when you put a slant on it, when you try to twist it for your own game or political gain or whatever, you're now basically trying to hoodwink the public. You're swaying the public, you're manipulating them, and that's not really what you're supposed to be doing, particularly if what you're supposed to be putting out is factual information. And I personally think it's egregious when you do that for a democratic republic, which needs this information to function properly. The citizens need this information to be able to make better decisions. They also need to be well educated to know the topics at hand, but still, that's, it's an important thing, and it should not be taken lightly. And the fact that we only have 6 main organizations disseminating out this news, and they're doing it for profit, already undermines the system. The money needs to be taken out of it. I agree with that point. There needs to be better regulation on this, and the fact that it was deregulated, I think, helped. That was another good point. The fact that it was deregulated in the late 80s really helped to bring about the stupidity that we're seeing now. And while alternative news sources, yeah, they're a good idea, and yeah, it's a good way to counteract what's going on, and I understand why people are going to alternative news sources since mainstream news is losing its credibility. We have to remember that they also are not above using, pandering tactics and slant tactics and things like that as well, especially if they're depending on ad revenue to function. We know about the clickbait. We know about, the sensationalistic headlines that you can see in alternative sources and the pandering to their audience. About the best way I can see to, try to counteract this is what Sister Danger pointed out, directly funding these people. Even that I don't think is foolproof, but it's the best we got. Directly funding them, and then okay, you don't have to depend on ad revenue. You don't have to depend on some outside company influencing your stuff. We're paying you. Now give us what we need or else we will stop funding you. That's a good bit of leverage. So anyway, again, I really was pleased with the videos that were put out in response to my topic. I found them very interesting and enlightening. Got me thinking a bit more about it. I thought I was going to see some more dissenting views, but I guess we're all concerned about this topic in about the same way. We just brought out different aspects of it that I thought was really, really interesting. And I'm hoping that we can see the same thing with the next topic, because Joe is going to be putting up his topic, and we're all going to be responding to that. So please don't miss that. Be sure to, rate, comment, and subscribe to these videos. Once again, if you haven't seen the videos responding to my particular topic, the links are below, so check those out. And hope to see you guys soon. Hope you like this, and catch you guys later.